making the pizza dough for our pizza night, and I've experimented in a lot of different ways with different flours, but got out all the ingredients that I need. The flour, I used an all-purpose white flour, semolina flour, and I use a whole spelt flour. Other ingredients are just active dry yeast, salt, and I use sunflower oil. But you can also use olive oil. That's also really good for pizza dough. So I'm going to be making 4 pizza doughs all at once in our nice big mixer. And the basic ratio is 5 cups of your flour, 2 cups of semolina, 4 teaspoons of dry yeast, 2 teaspoons of salt, and 4 tablespoons of oil, and then somewhere between 2.5 to 3 cups of water. And that will make 1 baking sheet pan, like a big baking sheet, restaurant sheet pan of pizza dough. But I'm going to do that 4 times in the big mixer here. This is the all-purpose white flour. And then I'm going to add 4 cups of the whole spelt. You can also use just whole wheat flour as well, or you can just use all white flour. I like to just add something whole in there just to add a little more color to the dough and a little more nutrition as well. And we'll do our semolina. And that's with our flour. And so I should know this by how much it equals when that's 2, 3.
What's that?
This is salt. So it's almost a 1/4 cup of salt. And this is our yeast. 4 teaspoons per dough.
What kind of yeast?
Active dry yeast.
You just get that at the store?
You can. Comes in little packets. It comes in little packets. We buy it in bulk, or you can get in a big block. But you can also do like a sourdough. Have a pizza dough that's a starter, where you actually are not using this yeast. So it'd probably be something that you set overnight, and rather than this one is a pretty quick rise. It'll only take a couple hours. So okay, so we're gonna just mix this all together first. All the different flours, yeast, salt, getting it all combined. Just make sure it's all mixed good. And now I want to do some oil. My wet container. I like to have separate wet and dry containers. Now I'm not being completely exact here. because it doesn't have to be completely exact. But about, approximately. So that was 4 tablespoons per dough. You get that in there and let that hang out. And now,
And what oil are you using?
I got sunflower oil, but you can use olive oil. And it's good to use some warm water for mixing dough rather than cold water, because the yeast is more alive at temperatures above 70 degrees.
But not too hot, right?
Not too hot because you don't want to kill it. You don't want it to be like, 115 or anything. But your tap usually is coming out somewhere between, it's about 100, 110, something like that. So that's approximately 2.5, 3 cups. So I'm going to do that 4 times. It's always good to get your dough mixed first so that it can rise, and then you can start paying attention to your toppings and getting those all set and ready to go. Alright. Get this straight in the mix. And I like to watch this and see how wet it is. I'd like to have maybe a more wet dough than dry dough. You can always add a little bit more flour. It's harder to get a dry, really hard dough.
To work with you?
Yeah. Because sometimes once a pizza dough is hard, it's just hard. Excuse me.
So how's that look in terms of moisture content?
Looking good. It's still pretty wet and still quite a bit of flour that needs to get mixed in there. I'm gonna cheat this a little bit and go along the sides. Yeah, this seems pretty good so far. Yeah, it feels nice and warm. A little bit sticky right now. So when you're using a mixer like this, what you're looking for is the dough to pull away from the sides when it seems thoroughly mixed. Looks like I might have to add a little bit extra flour.
Just so it tightens up a little bit and more. A little more rigidity.
That's kneading the dough for us a little bit more. That's the pizza dough. So after that's thoroughly mixed, what I usually do is just let it rise in that container as it is. Drizzle a little bit of oil around it, and so that when I take it out, it's a little easier to handle. And that will put it in a place that's draft free and cover it with just some kind of towel and let it rise and work on my toppings, and then we'll deal with the dough when we're ready to start laying it out after it rises and making the pizzas.
So about how long do you think it's going to stay in the mixer mixing?
Stay in the mixer mixing? Not that much longer.
How do you know it's done?
I think I need to add a little bit more flour. I made a little too wet. I think I'm counting mine. I may have lost count when I was adding the water. You know, this is first time video. Good thing we're not live. Live on TV. Although I think even live shows, you know, they do some rehearsing. Don't they?
You mean this isn't rehearsed?
I've never done this before. Yeah, I think I added just a little too much water. Or I'm gonna add a little bit more flour. A little bit. See, it's sticking in my fingers. A little bit sticky. Together a little bit more. Not too much though, because it's pulling. I don't know if you come take a look at this. It's pulled away from the sides pretty good.
So you're happy with that?
I am. So you see how it's pulling clean from the dough hook here. It's not really sticking to the dough hook. That's what I like to see. It's not super sticking to my fingers, and it's kind of elasticy. So that's what we like. So we'll take this out in here. Drizzle a little bit of oil around it in there. Sometimes you can, if your pilot light's on or something, you know, look kind of a little bit of a warm spot. This is a good spot for it because it's not too hot, but it'll warm up this a little bit more since our kitchen this time of year is a little bit cool. And then I'll put linen towels, fresh towels over it, keep it draft free. That's it. Now we can work on toppings.
Oh.
Okay, so our dough has risen. It's already actually starting to sink, and you know that it's definitely ready if you poke your finger into it and there's no spring back. So once it sinks in there, then you know, it's time to
It's ready.
Time to do the dough. So we're getting it out of here. Easy. Once you work with a lot of dough, it's really no big deal.
But so this is for 4, yeah?
This is for four big sheet pan pizzas. Alright, so I'm just gonna split it up now. this nice bench knife we've got here. And I'm just eyeballing it. I feel all pretty much the same. There's a little bit more in this one. These two. Okay. So, whoop, don't have that quite ready yet, but we'll just bring this over here anyway. So this is our big sheet pan, and I'm using just some brown rice flour. You can also use cornmeal. I've also just oiled the pan as well. But right now we have a lot of brown rice flour on hand, so that's what I'm using, and this is just to make sure that the dough doesn't really stick too much to the pan. But like I said, cornmeal is a good one for that as well. And so I don't know about flipping dough, but we are going to stretch it out a little bit. Kind of get out some of those big globbies. If I really had professional dough and knew how to do it, I'd flip it in the air.
Next time.
But I don't know how to do that. So actually what I'm going to do, I realized that once you sort of punch down the dough, it has lost a lot of its air. So what we're going to do is we're actually, now that I've messed with it some, I'm going to let it just rest here for a second or a minute or so, and then it will sort of soften up again, and then I can manipulate it a little bit more. So while that's resting, I can tell you about the different toppings that we've put together. All of this is from our farm, except for the cheese. This is tomato sauce that I canned from over the summertime. It's got our peppers in it and garlic, basil. We've got some potatoes that were boiled and then we just mashed them up a little bit. Some of our onions just lightly sauteed. Some butternut squash, also lightly cooked with salt and pepper. Some kale and collards that were blanched and frozen that I took out of the freezer. And we've got our bacon, maple cured bacon, and our spicy Italian sausage and some garlic there. And then the cheese is mozzarella cheese from Bunton Farm in Orford, New Hampshire, just north of here, that she makes from her own cow's milk. And those are our exciting January midwinter pizza toppings. So this should be elasticy enough. So what I like to do is even have just a little bit of oil on your fingers if you like, so that, or you can wet your fingers with some water. But what I'm just looking to do is just stretch out the dough so that it meets the edge. And we've got a crust to work with. And don't be afraid of holes and loose spots, because there's always going to be some corner spot that has excess dough that you can
make a little patch.
Make a little patch. And it's no big deal. No big deal. Move that dough around a little. Yeah, patch that up a little bit. That seems pretty good. Again, you're not looking for perfection. There's not anything. You're just looking for it to go to the edge, because I like to have a little bit of crust. And there's our dough in the pan ready for our toppings.
We need a shot of the thick and delicious crust. Ooh, look at that. Spongy. Ooh, that's good.
This is, they did the original testing, like,
Pizza night.